Imagine you're at the airport, grabbing a bottle of water. You walk up to a silent kiosk. No cashier, no greeting. You scan the barcode and swipe your card yourself. But before the transaction completes, the machine freezes and asks a question. Add a tip? 18%, 20%, or 25%? You feel a sudden, bizarre pang of guilt. You have to wonder who exactly you are tipping. The machine? The person who stocked the fridge hours ago? I'm Neuramyth. Today, we're looking at the data the restaurant industry avoids and the history that explains why your digital interactions now come with a surcharge. That guilt you feel is the result of an algorithmic tax woven into American commerce. It's a moment that shows the rules we followed regarding service and pay no longer apply. This figure represents a structural requirement for the service industry. In 2023, American consumers spent an estimated $77.6 billion on tips at restaurants and bars, which accounts for roughly 23% of the total wages for that workforce. We are currently in an era of tipflation, and the data shows the system is reaching a breaking point. 77% of Americans now find tipping expectations ridiculous. 66% feel pressured by digital payment screens, and 64% admit to tipping purely out of guilt. Following the pandemic, corporations realized they could use software to set 20 or 25% as the new default. These inflated expectations have since moved to drive-thrus and kiosks where no human service is provided. Despite the shift, 62% of consumers say they would prefer businesses to simply raise their prices and pay their staff a stable, flat wage. Businesses maintain the status quo because it works. Consumers continue to subsidize corporate payrolls out of their own pockets to avoid appearing cheap. Tipping traces back to the aristocratic homes of feudal Europe. Lords gave their servants veils for duties outside their normal scope. When wealthy Americans brought the custom home in the mid-19th century, the public initially rejected it as a classist, master-serf custom that had no place in a democracy. Following the Civil War, the hospitality industry realized they could use this custom to avoid paying a base salary to newly liberated Black Americans. By making income voluntary, they kept a massive workforce in a state of economic subservience. The industrialist George Pullman was the primary architect who institutionalized this labor structure across the country. Pullman hired thousands of formerly enslaved Black men as sleeping car porters. He paid them as little as $12 a month, a fraction of a white worker's wage, while demanding 400 hours of work. To survive, these porters were forced to solicit tips from passengers. The foundation of the American tipping habit is the replacement of guaranteed wages with a system of voluntary gratuities, a practice established specifically to exploit a newly freed workforce. To understand why this system persists, we have to look at the legal and psychological tactics used to protect it. First, we almost abolished tipping a century ago. In 1904, a populist movement grew to 100,000 members and successfully banned tipping in 6 states before corporate lobbyists dismantled those laws in the 1920s. Even the language of tipping has a hidden history. The word itself traces back to 17th century criminal slang for an illicit bribe or a payout of stolen goods. In 1938, President Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act to create the first federal minimum wage. However, tipped workers were excluded. This was a deliberate move to appease Southern politicians and preserve the labor dynamics of the Jim Crow era. We also assume tips reward good service, but Cornell University research shows the size of a tip has almost zero statistical correlation to service quality. Instead, it relies on behavioral triggers, like a server squatting to eye level or making light physical contact. In a 2002 study, researchers found that offering a second mint with the check caused tips to surge by 14%. This relies on the psychological urge to reciprocate a gift, even a small one. Because tips are taxed directly out of an employee's base pay, many service workers open their paychecks to find a net pay of $0. Since the federal sub-minimum wage is so low, the IRS taxes frequently consume the entire hourly amount. If this information is changing how you look at your next receipt, hit the like button and subscribe to Neuramyth for more. The modern tipping experience is a combination of historical legal loopholes and calculated behavioral psychology. The core of the modern system is a legal mechanism known as the tip credit. This chart shows the federal math. While the standard minimum wage is $7.25, employers can claim a $5.12 tip credit. This means the law allows the employer to pay as little as $2.13 an hour, counting your tips toward their payroll obligations. This sub-minimum wage has been frozen for over 30 years. In 1996, Hernan Cain, chief lobbyist for the National Restaurant Association, brokered a deal permanently decoupling the tipped wage from the standard minimum wage. Recently, industry groups have supported the "No Tax on Tips" slogan. Because 40% of tipped workers don't earn enough to face federal income tax, this policy provides them no benefit. It serves as a shield to protect the current $2.13 wage floor. And this structural framework allows massive corporations to offload 71% of their payroll obligations directly onto the consumer. Currently, 7 states have abolished the sub-minimum wage entirely. In California, Washington, and Minnesota, employers are required to pay the full state minimum wage before a single tip is received. In these states, restaurants are thriving and worker poverty rates have decreased, despite industry warnings that higher wages would destroy the business model. The frustration we feel at the checkout counter shouldn't be directed at the person handing us our coffee, but at the multi-billion-dollar system standing behind them. Should we abolish tipping entirely and move to a flat wage? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and tell me what topic you want us to look at next. Thanks for watching. Tipping remains a corporate subsidy, established in the 19th century and maintained today by modern lobbying and a digital screen.